everyone, just a short and simple video today. I'm working on a larger video about the two new governing body members, Jacob Rumph and Jody Jadali, two new cult leaders brought into the cult leader fold. But spoiler alert, the video mostly centers on Jody Jadali and the real estate stuff the group has been into lately. Other than the latest governing body update where Garrett Loesch interviews the two new governing body members, there isn't anything on the website about them. Except for now, they just released a talk by Jacob Rumph called It Was Very Good. Calling his shot, maybe that's what we're supposed to say after we hear his talk. And I watched it, and I didn't like it very much, and I have some things to say.
Have you ever wondered if your best would ever be good enough?
So we start off with some good old-fashioned gaslighting. Is your best good enough? Have you ever felt like that?
Because of the pressure from the world around us and our own imperfection, many of us are just too hard on ourselves.
It's hard to imagine a witness ever feeling like that, unless they saw this talk.
You may say, I'm doing my best. What more can I do? Take a good look at your best, scrutinize it. Examine very closely all you're doing with the time that you have.
So while it's nice that Jacob Rumph has this talk about how your best probably is good enough, you also have this other talk on the website by Samuel Hurd, or as he sometimes prefers to be called, Sammy.
Mommy, when I get out, call me Sammy.
Where it's strongly implied that your best probably isn't good enough, so you should try harder.
We're told to examine our own actions. So ask yourself, how am I doing spiritually? Am I happy with my attendance at Christian meetings? Do I participate by sharing meaningful comments as able? How about my personal study of the Bible? Let me examine my involvement in the ministry. Could I do better in preparing for my return visits? Do I conduct any Bible studies with interested ones? If so, am I content with what I am doing? In effect, you're asking yourself, is my best good enough?
Have you ever wondered if your best would ever be good enough? Many of us are just too hard on ourselves.
And if you think that sounds like a bit of whiplash, like a good cop, bad cop routine, well, cult experts agree, especially Alexandra Stein in Terror, Love, and Brainwashing, Attachment in Cults and Totalitarian Systems. Stein says that cults like to instigate people into a state of terror without solution. That's from our perspective, people on the outside looking in. On the inside, the terror that the group presents does have a solution, and it's to serve the group even harder. Now, of course, we know that's not a real solution, but they have no other choice other than leaving the group, which is one of the things they're terrified of doing, because, of course, Jehovah's Witnesses know that if you do that, you'll be destroyed. In one of these scary situations where Jesus is a giant and topples tanks with angelic governing body members like Jacob Rumph, but we don't have time to get into that. Along with the deliberate inculcation of fear, says Alexander Stein, the group positions itself as the supposed safe haven, even though it is the group itself creating the threat. This inculcation of fright without solution, of terror, creates a crisis in the follower, but after the crisis, created by the group, lo and behold, the group itself is there to save the terrified broken person, to pick up the shattered pieces. Thus the group contains both the hard cop, who terrifies, and the soft cop, who comforts and provides the only remaining safe haven. Now, any Jehovah's Witness who's made it this far in the video is first of all a champion. Good on you for sticking it out. But second of all, you're probably thinking, but this is a loving talk. It's maybe a refutation of Sammy's talk. Here's the new young guy, Jacob Rumph, saying, no, your best is good enough. But I can't help but notice they didn't actually delete that Samuel Hurd talk. And, most of the talks on jw.org are about how you should probably try to simplify your life and do more for the religion.
We might see others in the congregation that are doing more than we are. But then we look back at Galatians 6:4 again, and it clearly said that I should not compare myself with the other person. So we could quickly assume that we're doing what we can, reasoning that it's good enough. But let's not forget the first part of the verse. We are to examine our own actions. We need to compare what we are doing with what we personally could be doing. We need to be active and not become self-satisfied and overconfident.
Well, Alexander Stein says, once in this state of terror or fright without solution, even small gestures on the part of the group begin to feel benevolent and caring, increasing the sense that it is the group that will protect one, the group who will save one from the threat.
Too hard on ourselves, maybe even demanding perfection of ourselves. One sister explained her feelings this way. She says, no matter how much I love Jehovah or how much effort I put forth to serve him, I always feel that it is not good enough.
Maybe we can relate to how she feels at times.
Probably most of us watching this are thinking, wow, this guy seems really condescending and infantilizing. But witnesses sort of have no choice but to see it as loving, because it's the only love that they get, from the leaders anyway. You know, probably their family and friends are a lot nicer, but they won't be so nice if you leave the group. Anyway, that was a big tangent on just basically the first minute of Jacob's talk, but we're going to get back into it.
Unreasonable expectations can zap us of our joy, strangle our joy, and sometimes the joy of those around us. But aren't we glad that Jehovah's different? Though he is perfect, he's not a perfectionist.
All right, I'm immediately a little unsure of why Jacob Rumph is going this particular direction.
It's interesting that there's so many reasons that Jehovah has to be joyful. And one of those is because he's so reasonable.
Oh, he's so reasonable.
So the question is, how does he do it? How does Jehovah maintain this balance and find joy in his work and also in the work that others do? To answer those questions, we're going to focus in on one of Jehovah's most beautiful works, Planet Earth.
I know, you've probably wondered if your best is good enough, but there's this great biblical example that we can look at, someone who we can strive to be like, Jehovah God. We don't have unreasonable expectations, just try and be more like literally God.
Now, when Jehovah created the earth or was creating the earth, it was so beautiful and so unique that the angels broke out in applause during its formation. And then at some point,
So this seems made up to me, because he doesn't actually cite a scripture. You will not find this in the Bible. It does not say at any point that the angels in heaven broke out singing about how beautiful God's creation was. He's like gaslighting me. I'm pulling up the Bible now, just to double check. Listen, Mr. Rumph, your name's Jacob, my name's Jacob. I want to believe you, of course. All right, so a dead giveaway that there's no angel singing at all is that if you do a search for angel, there's 0 results on the page. So you can look all you want, but it's just not there. It also does not say that in chapter 2 of the book of Genesis. It does not mention angels at all in chapter 3. It doesn't mention that in chapter 4 either. Now, I'm, of course, going to keep going page by page through the entire Bible, but just for now, I'm going to go ahead and say that this seems like a thing that is based off of JW doctrine, but is not actually said in the Bible. My evidence for that is that he doesn't read a scripture to back up that point, but he does have a scripture that he's setting up, so let's see what it is.
and then at some point, Jehovah expressed the words found at Genesis chapter 1. Open your Bibles there with me, please. Genesis chapter 1. And we'll read the first sentence of verse 31. After that, God saw everything he had made, and look, it was very good. Now, this expression, very good, is the first time that it's used in the creation account. What does it mean? Well, the Insight book, under the article Perfection, has a very nice explanation, and to sum it all up, it basically means that the earth was perfect.
Now, hang on a second. In Jacob Rumph's unbiased opinion, there's a very nice explanation in another book that his company wrote. This bothered me as a witness. Now I finally have a platform to preach my truth.
Why is it necessary to be so picky, to be so fussy?
This is very lame wording from the Bible.
It was very good.
What a boring way of describing the beauty of planet Earth. This is God's book, and he chose the most boring words. And they know that they're boring, because the only way they're able to get around it is by referencing their fake encyclopedia that their organization wrote, where they assert that it basically means that the Earth was perfect.
And to sum it all up, it basically means that the earth was perfect.
I object to this because if that's what it basically meant, then why isn't that what it said? Why does it say very good?
The earth was perfect.
Now, does that mean that the earth was completely finished yet? No.
Just a lot of weird circular logic. He said it was very good. Like, hey, all right, good job so far. Gotta do a little bit more chipping away at my whittling project, the planet Earth. That's what God said. But no, he's like, well, God said it was very good, which basically means perfect, but it wasn't finished yet, so it wasn't perfect. I mean, it was, because everything he makes is perfect, but it wasn't complete. because the Earth, the globe, wouldn't be perfect if we weren't on it, but he said it was before we were on it, so it can't mean that.
We know that the earth was beautiful, but it was still a large and mostly uncultivated wilderness. Jehovah said to Adam and Eve that they've got to subdue the earth so that they could extend the boundaries of the Garden of Eden to the whole planet.
Even that little thing he said about Adam and Eve needing to extend the boundaries of the Garden of Eden to the full planet, that's also not in the Bible. This is one of those things that once I started questioning and really checking everything they said against the Bible, I realized just how much doctrine they casually insert into their descriptions of the Bible as if the Bible validates it. But it doesn't. The Bible says, become fruitful and fill the earth. That's it. But Jehovah's Witnesses believe that Adam and Eve were perfect, which the Bible also doesn't say. And even though it doesn't say that, Jehovah's Witnesses are like, no, it does say they're perfect. And also, the definition of perfect is they never die, even though it doesn't say that either. The Bible never says that they were going to live forever. It just says they were going to live, and it's the serpent who says to Eve that if you eat from the tree of the garden of the knowledge of good and bad, that you won't die. And then sure enough, she eats it and then she doesn't die. Well, the witness explanation of that is that they were going to live forever and they die eventually, which wasn't the plan, and that's how Satan tricked them. My point is just that it's really difficult to do rebuttals to these talks. Like, I intended this to be a short, really short video. I mean, it's just a small 10-minute talk, but literally every sentence he's saying contains a little bit of a lie. So I've made a mistake and I'm doing it again. I'm making a long video.
So then the question is, how could it be said that the earth was perfect if Jehovah's purpose for the earth was not yet complete? Well, it's interesting what the same Insight Book article goes on to say about all of Jehovah's creation. It says perfection of any other person or thing, other than Jehovah himself, of course, is relative, not absolute. So the earth was perfect in a relative sense. It met Jehovah's perfect standards at that moment, even though there was still much to do.
Jacob Rumph really just pulled an Obi-Wan Kenobi. What I said was true from a certain point of view. Jedi mind trick on you.
So the earth was perfect in a relative sense.
So if perfect is relative, then it's not a very useful term, is it? I understand what he's saying, but they believe that humans will reach perfection in paradise, by which they mean they will never age and never die. So that's perfect. But also the unfinished Earth, just a misshapen rock in space with only some of the features installed, the water feature, that was also perfect. All right, I'm getting a little confused as to what he's even trying to say, probably because I'm pausing it every 2 seconds and talking for a long time. So he's going to give us the wrap up. What's the lesson?
Now here's our first lesson, the first thing we can learn from Jehovah here.
Damn it, Rumph, you made me do it again. I had to pause because you did a sneaky. Here's what we can learn from Jehovah. But this is not from Jehovah. It's from what he is saying in the Insight Book, in the doctrinal teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses, most of which are not reflected in the actual text of the Bible. And I'm not just being pedantic here. Jehovah's Witnesses are supposed to be absolutely obedient to the organization, no matter what, even when it doesn't make sense to them.
Trusting Jehovah includes trusting his representatives. The life-saving direction we receive from Jehovah's organization may not appear practical from a human standpoint, but we recognize the fulfillment of the prophecy at Matthew 24:45 about the faithful and discreet slave, and we're ready to obey any instruction they provide.
And that doesn't seem unreasonable to them because they feel strongly that they are not being taught by imperfect men. They are being taught by Jehovah.
Now here's our first lesson, the first thing we can learn from Jehovah here.
A small moment, but this is something that courts need to take into consideration here. Everything that these guys say, the governing body, everything that they say is construed as teaching directly from God. Jacob Rumph is just a vessel. He happens to be conveying this particular lesson from the Bible, and while the leaders insist that they are imperfect and can make mistakes and don't need to apologize for those mistakes, also, the things they're teaching are literally from Jehovah. Doesn't really make sense. It's very annoying.
The first thing we can learn from Jehovah here, he is so reasonable. He doesn't have to wait for every detail of something that he's doing to be finished before he can find joy in what he's doing. He can be content with his work, even when his work is still a work in progress.
What? This sucks. Do I even need to explain this? He just read Genesis 1, where God makes the earth and says it's very good. But oh, the earth isn't quite finished yet. Which, who cares? You just read the next couple verses. Unless you're weird like Jacob Rumph and insist that when he says very good, it means basically perfect. And then you have to go on to explain confusingly how an unfinished earth that isn't perfect by witness standards is actually perfect in a relative sense. And then he extrapolates that to mean Jehovah is very reasonable because even when something isn't quite finished, he's enjoying what he's doing. You know, you're doing stuff. Jehovah's Witnesses, you're out there doing things. You're building not planet Earth, but kingdom halls for us. Stay tuned to the next alt-worldly video, is what Jacob Rumph is saying. So don't be too hard on yourself. You can do it. God takes pride in cosmically and impossibly creating planets as if they're Play-Doh, sculpting them like the divine potter. He takes a little step back, puts his finger up to his chin and says, very good. Basically perfect. I'm enjoying myself. Me, God. And you need to be like that. I mean, this is how narcissistic tendencies are instilled by the leadership to the group.
Now, what do you think Jehovah wants for you and me? Well, he wants us to enjoy our work the same way that he enjoys his. But we might say, well, that's fine, but Jehovah's work is perfect. My work is not.
Hey, wait, yeah, I did actually say that earlier.
Principles still apply. Think about it. Maybe we've come a long way in improving on a quality like patience. And we've done so much, and we're so different from the person that we were before. And then all of a sudden, a situation comes up that puts to a real test, that puts a test to our patience, and we realize how much we still have to work on. Or maybe you're sitting here, as some of you are, as Gilead students, soon-to-be graduates. You've been studying a lot for 5 months, and you're wondering,
How in the world am I going to ever be able to apply all the things that I learned at Gilead? I just don't measure up.
Don't persecute yourself.
It's telling that the things he says you don't need to beat yourself up about aren't, am I getting enough hours in the field ministry, or am I engaging enough in theocratic construction projects? No, he doesn't want you to stop and think about whether that stuff is good enough, because that's the stuff that generates a profit for the group. But being occasionally impatient, or not studying enough, or just feeling inadequate, sort of, nebulously, don't persecute yourself over such silly things. Be kind to yourself, Lord, is what he would never say, because Peter said that in the Bible, and then Jesus said, get behind me, Satan. So you should never say things like be kind to yourself, which I guess would be the bad cop side of what Jacob Rumph is saying.
Now, Jehovah is also able to find joy in the work that others do, and we can see that also in the creation of planet Earth. We remember that in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, Jehovah introduces his son and master worker, Jesus.
What? Okay, it doesn't say that. It says, then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have in subjection the fish of the sea and the flying creatures of the heavens, and the domestic... you get it. The Bible, just sort of out of nowhere, has God talking to other people who haven't been established, because it's not a very well-written book. But witnesses teach that Jesus had a pre-human existence with God, where he just was sort of the guy who helped make stuff.
So Jesus was there when Jehovah said, very good.
And so he just says that, like it's just there, but it's not. You gotta check him on this stuff, folks. He didn't actually say that, and it's not even established that Jesus is there. So we're in pure fan fiction territory now.
Jehovah was saying, I appreciate your contribution to the making of the earth, even though there's still much to do. Wow, can you imagine how Jesus would have felt hearing Jehovah say, very good?
It's not that great of a compliment, Jacob Rumph. Very good isn't that great. On the IGN website, for example, a 7 out of 10 is good, and an 8 out of 10 is great. So I think it's safe to say something like 7.5 would be considered very good. So God gave his early work, and apparently the work that his son did on his behalf, a 7.5 out of 10. I don't know if that's that exciting. Very good work, son. 7.5 out of 10.
Let's imagine by reading one verse, and we'll link these two verses, Genesis 1:31, to Proverbs chapter 8 and verse 30. Remember that Proverbs chapter 8, much of it is talking about Jesus' pre-human existence when he's helping Jehovah make all things. Now imagine the day that Jehovah says, very good, in verse 30.
So I just scanned Proverbs, doesn't say anything like that at all. Read it for yourself. Proverbs are just like little sayings of wisdom. I always had a hard time with this as a witness when they would use Psalms, which is like, songs and poems and stuff, and Proverbs, which are just pithy bits of wisdom written poetically, and they would say that stuff was prophecy, Bible prophecy. Like, no. You know what is prophecy? The stuff written by prophets. You know what isn't? The things that are called songs. What's the point of having books of the Bible written by prophets where they're specifically saying, hi, I'm a prophet and I'm prophesying something, if you're also just going to sneak prophecies secretly into little songs in fortune cookie wisdom? I don't know. I think I wouldn't write a book like this if I was God.
Proverbs chapter 8 and verse 30. It says, "Then I, Jesus, was beside him, Jehovah, as a master worker. I was the one he was especially fond of day by day." So what's Jesus saying? He felt appreciated by Jehovah.
You see how he has to do that? He's got to put it in brackets. I made a little video about that, which I'll link in the description. It's a shame that God just didn't write the Bible like this to begin with, because then he wouldn't have to insert all the secret meanings in the margins.
So again, what's the lesson we can learn from Jehovah? Well, he's reasonable in what he expects from others. He doesn't just get hung up on all the things that haven't been done yet. He focuses primarily on what has been done well, and he expresses appreciation for that.
So the whole point is that Jehovah is actually quite reasonable. Take it from him. When he made the earth, he said it was very good, even when it wasn't done yet. Yay! And as we've established, when they say Jehovah, they really mean the governing body. So the implied meaning here is that the governing body is very reasonable in their expectations. They're not expecting too much of you, just your best. And your best is good enough. Right?
Is my best good enough?
In my opinion, the best way that God could express appreciation is by saying to somebody in real life, hey, I appreciate you. That's usually when I feel the most appreciated, is when a real person says that they appreciate me. But it's nice to know that in an old book, if you string two verses together from various parts of the Bible, like they're Q drops on 4chan, and you decode the meaning, the secret message is God appreciates you and is reasonable, and you should just keep doing more stuff for him, because he's nice.
Have you ever delegated an assignment to someone, maybe at Bethel? And though much has been done, there's still a lot to do.
Wow, have you ever done something but then there's still a lot to do? Can you relate to this crazy scenario?
Have you ever performed a task or a job?
There's that brother or sister that's the single parent that has just emptied themselves to try to help their child to come and to love Jehovah. And they're such a good example, but their child just doesn't want it. He doesn't want the truth. You see, here's our chance to imitate Jehovah.
Oh, God damn it. And then he had to sneak in a little jab at me personally. From one Jacob to another. The parents are trying so hard, but the kids just don't want the truth. I don't know why it specifically is the case that it's a single parent whose kids don't join the religion.
There's that brother or sister that's the single parent that has just emptied themselves to try to help their child to come.
I mean, both my parents were Jehovah's Witnesses, and I still rejected the truth. But no, I didn't. I just realized that it wasn't the truth. I wasn't convinced by it. I did not feel that it was the truth any longer. And I don't care to take that belief away from anybody else. I just wanted to live my own life. It's just that the group makes it impossible to leave with dignity. But here you have the manipulative, toxic language just snuck right in there with a smile on his blank, brainwashed face. That empty smile. It's hollow, like the earth used to be when God said it was very good. They just don't want the truth. I mean, we call it the truth, so it must be. And they have to be crazy to not want something called the truth. Expressed in these terms, yeah, of course it would be totally psychotic for someone to just intentionally believe something that wasn't true. But that's just not what happens, is it, Jacob Rumph? That's not what's happening.
That is not what is happening. That is not what is happening.
And that was the twist ending of the video. I secretly revealed it was an episode of That's Not What's Happening the whole time. Jacob, that's not what's happening. None of what you said was happening ever happened or is happening or was happening at any point in time. The angels were not singing in heaven with how beautiful the earth was. Like, maybe, sure, but the Bible doesn't even say that. It does not say that Jesus was there. And even if it did, it didn't say that God, told Jesus he did a good job, or in fact, a very good job. And by very good, it meant basically perfect. It's really difficult to find much comfort in the idea of an invisible, timeless entity who makes planets, taking momentary pride in his work. That's pretty hard to relate to a modern Jehovah's Witness who's on a tight budget and does not live in the cosmos, but rather lives in like a one-bedroom apartment and maybe works 2 jobs. Jacob doesn't have to worry about that, of course. I mean, he lives and eats and sleeps and travels for free on the membership's dime, but that's the next video.
You see, here's our chance to imitate Jehovah, to tell them how good they have done, to focus on that. You see, when we do that, it's going to help them to continue giving their best for Jehovah. And especially, it's going to help them to get through those moments when they feel like they've not done enough.
Stripping my own emotions out of this, it's a nice thing to encourage people to tell each other more that they do a good job. I've sincerely been trying to do this more as a person. If I enjoy somebody's thing that I read that they wrote, or a video that they made, or a podcast, or whatever it is, I do try and specifically tell that person, hey, I really appreciated that, thank you. So that's nice. But what a weird way to get there. What a weird way to arrive at just, it's nice to tell people that they did a good job. Well, the answer is that he had 10 whole minutes to fill of a talk at a Gilead graduation. So what did we learn today, class? I don't know, probably nothing. I just kind of was annoyed by this talk. Uh-oh, now the police are out to get me. I don't know if you can hear the cops in the background, but they're coming to arrest me because I haven't finished recording this or my next video. I did happen to clock that Mr. Rumph has a lot of awkward pauses, so many of them, and if I know me, there might be a little bonus here at the end.
It's interesting. So, planet Earth. Perfect. No. Now, think about it. Maybe that puts to, or persecute yourself. Very good. And verse 30. In verse 30.
He doesn't want the truth.
Very good. The reality is you have done so much already. Done.